was dying. If they said this on the news, if they would clarify the picture instead of seeking to confuse. If you could see the ice caps melting, if you could watch the oceans rise, if you could see the consequences right before your eyes. If you knew the kids were dying, if you could look inside the river where their food comes from, filled with cyanide. If you could hear the parents pleading, if they were looking right at you, if you could see the anguish in their hearts. What if you knew? Bombs are falling, if they showed them hit the ground, if you could see the bodies flying, if you could hear the sound, if you could see the rubble where the hospital once stood, if you saw the child's lifeless limbs, would you hold them if you could? If you knew that they were lying every time they spoke, for every laser-guided pinprick there were lives lost in the smoke. If instead of just the generals they had doctors too to describe the carnage of the cluster bombs, what if you knew? They were saying when they think you cannot hear, if you understood what they do, if for you it was so clear, if you knew they shut down the factory in an economic ruse, if you could kiss the cheek of the child in the sweatshop that made your shoes. Every time we went to war to fight our evil foes, they told you we were really fighting for the good of CEOs. If you could feel the hunger of the many, see the riches of the few, if they told it like it is, what if you knew? Living in a huge conspiracy, would you leave your suburbs, get out of your SUV? Would you hit the streets and fight for all our lives? Would you hold your ground when the stormtroopers arrive? If you knew that the whole planet depended on what you do now, would you take them in with the speed our times allow? If the pundits told the truth for just a week or two and real life was shown on TV, what if you knew?
Hello, this is Dan Shea with Veterans for Peace Forum. That was a song by David Rovics, who is sort of a troubadour who's been around the world singing his songs and critiquing our society. And we're going to have him in here in a few minutes. He should be coming in to speak with us. This is, I have today with me an Afghan veteran, Tobias Shea, who's joined me for this program. We're going to discuss a few things. Given a couple of things that just happened, war resistor Travis Bishop, who just got 3 months for resisting the war as a conscientious objector, finally is getting released from Fort Lewis, but he's being released because IVAW, Veterans for Peace, Courage to Resist, and a number of people that wrote in saying this was an injustice and that he needed to be released, had a real effect upon the military finally making a decision to release him. There was another person that just had a happy ending. It's a single mom, Alex Hutchinson, who wins discharge. She was a single mother who they were going to deploy, and when she refused to be deployed to Afghanistan, they began to set up a court-martial for her. But with all the letters that came in and all the people that were speaking out, they finally decided to discharge her with an honorable discharge, I believe. So these are the reasons that we're speaking out. These are the things that are important. Now I want to first start off with Tobias. Tobias Shea, it just so happens that Tobias and I are related, and when we first met, it was a couple of years ago. Benji Lewis with IVAW was getting ready to go to Venezuela. You had come out to see what that was all about. You had also did, I was working with the GI Sanctuary movement, and you were doing something at the City Council, just doing some journalism, basically, and was interviewing me. And then when we got together about a year later, we started talking about how our names were related and bringing the piece together. And so happened you're the son of my cousin, Tom, and so it was just, it's amazing. And I said to you at that time that I believe that there was a revolutionary gene that ran in the Shea family somewhere.
It goes way back.
It goes way back. And Dave Rovics here is, like I said, a troubadour. He's you were in came out of a classical music tradition in Connecticut and became a fan. It says of the popular regimes of the early 90s.
Populist.
Populist,
yes,
huh?
Yes. Not the.
So,
yeah, not
well,
the
then,
Hugo Chavez.
let's talk about that a little bit. What do you mean by the populist movement at that time?
Well, I mean, literally, I'm talking about like the various governments that are coming to power all over Latin America. I mean, it's really quite a time there. I mean, with Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador. I mean, really having authentically left-wing governments in power that are actually distributing a lot of the wealth and land, and providing medical care and education for people who haven't had it in 500 years. I mean, it's very significant, the developments. It's at least as significant as Allende was, except this guy's not going away. Just as good, if not better. But he, he's got oil money and the military like him, and he's not going anywhere. It's I think pretty exciting.
Well, it's strange when you said you came from classical music. I work for the Oregon Symphony, my day job, and I love classical music. I'm learning more and more about it. I didn't have a real background. My area of music was always blues and jazz. I kind of like that music and been a part of a number of friends that play in that repertoire, and I've loved it. And it began the whole sort of study of people that are playing folk music and that history from, I came out of the 1970s, after coming back from Vietnam, and the anti-war movements, the Bob Dylans, Joan Baez, etc. These songs meant so much to me because their lyrics had so much to say. Tobias, you're also a writer. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your military experience. Let's talk. You were a sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. You want to tell us why you went in the military, the age you were when you went in?
So I joined, I was 19, almost 20. I had a couple years out of high school, and I was just at a point in my life where I wasn't really doing anything. You and I have obviously talked about it previously. I was unemployed. I was just kind of couch surfing, didn't have any real direction, and had the poor chance to bump into a recruiter one afternoon and started a conversation, and a lot of them are really good at their job. And I made a conscious decision as well, but they put a lot on the plate that says, we can make you a completely different person in a really short time. And that was attractive to me at that point. I made a quick decision and didn't really unpack it like I could have, I think, or maybe didn't really discuss with people who were more wise than myself about what I was getting myself into.
What did your family think when you did this?
They were supportive, but I think they were supportive because they were my family. Mm-hmm. I remember a couple conversations with my father when I was at MEPS after I'd taken the oath, and it was sort of the reality was beginning to sink in that, okay, I'm leaving in 3 weeks and I'm going to go do this. And it was the early part of 2002, so Afghanistan had already kicked off. September 11th had sort of had some time to sink in people's minds, and he and I had a conversation about, wow, this is a commitment. This isn't a job interview. It's not something that I can walk away from necessarily. So at that point, I was not so much doing it for any kind of patriotism or any ideological reason as much as I'm going to have a job for 4 years. I'll have a steady paycheck, and I didn't think much farther than that on it, unfortunately. So. And
what did you do when you were in there?
I joined as a cook, and that was part of the discussion that my parents sort of said, maybe not combat arms, maybe stay away from anything that puts a gun in your hand. And I said, that sounds, I'm not a violent person. I didn't intend on anything like that. So, I worked at a pizza place before joining. Why wouldn't I become a cook? That being said, I still, I wanted to get as much out of the experience as I could. So I volunteered for airborne training. I volunteered for Ranger School, but I didn't make the cut for the class that I wanted to get into. So I went airborne and made it to the 82nd, which was exciting. Jumping out of planes is fun. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I was just going in to be a cook. Like I said, it was going to be a job. It was going to give me some experience that hopefully I could bring out of the Army and be able to get a job, which unfortunately it didn't. But
And what happened when you were there then?
well, I got to Fort Bragg, and I spent about 3 months at Fort Bragg before my first deployment. So I kind of jumped right into it. I didn't even get any time in the kitchen. We went straight to issuing my DCUs, and I was packing my bags as I was unpacking my bags. I moved to base, got my barracks, had my Afghanistan issue within the first 3 months. So it was pretty quick, jumped right into it. There's not a lot of information that they give you. We're going to Afghanistan. What's our mission going to be? We can't tell you until we get there. So again, there were a lot of decisions where I was just following orders. It wasn't anything that I believed in. It wasn't necessarily anything that I had any ties to. It was just, this is my job now. And after that first deployment, it became much more about, wow, I really need to figure out what I think about what's going on here. And I had the great opportunity to spend some time with Jeremy Hinsman.
Oh, wow.
That first deployment. And that's the time when he was going through his whole conscientious objector paperwork. And we spent a significant amount of time together, and I sort of observed the process that they were putting him through, because he was an infantryman. He went in as an 11 Bravo. He wanted to be on the front lines, and he got to Afghanistan and recognized that it wasn't about defense. We weren't defending anything there. They were actively going into homes, and they were actively searching, and they were actively attacking people, and that was not what he signed up to do. And it was incredible to watch him make that stand and to have discussions with him on a personal basis and see, like, why.
Let's tell him a little bit who Jerry is.
So he was in the 82nd Airborne Division, an infantryman. He got to Afghanistan, and like I said, went out on the first mission and recognized that this is not about defense. This is not about me defending myself against anyone. They were actively attacking people, and he made it clear to the company commander. He said, I'm not going to fire on anyone. If I'm fired on, I'll return fire. And they said, okay, you're done.
He became a conscientious objector.
He became a conscientious objector. He put his paperwork in, and they, so the base we were on was based in the Kandahar airport. So we had a pretty built up facility, right around 3,000, 3,500 soldiers, a big operation going on. They took him from infantry duty and put him in KP duty with the cooks, and that's what I was doing that first deployment. And they had him working 18-hour days. He would come in with the morning crew, and he would prep breakfast, and then he would wash dishes all day, and then he would prep dinner and be done. And he would work 18-hour days, 7 days a week, because they couldn't put him on his mission.
Right.
They couldn't make him do his MOS. And it was incredible because, so you work 18-hour days, and then he would get off and he would train for a marathon. We would go,
Wow.
we would go running together after he got off shift, and then he would be back in the next day. And it was one of the more...
Didn't sleep.
No, not at all. But he had a will inside of him, and it wasn't, he was never, I won't say he was never angry, because there were definitely times when when it got to him.
But he wasn't preachy.
No, he wasn't preachy, and he made his stance, and he did the job that they gave him.
Yeah.
And that was his job. That's just what he had to do. And then, obviously, as soon as we got back, within 3 months, he saved all the money from that deployment, didn't spend anything. He knew what he was going to do, and then, obviously, I'm sure you know the story, that he left for Canada, and he's been going through that process ever since.
Yeah, he's one of the first GI resistors. And actually, there's a song on here, on this CD that we were talking about, Until You Come Home, about Jeremy Hinsman. And you'll have to pick up the CD and come out and hear the music to hear that song. It's a powerful, it was a very powerful song, Jeremy Hinsman. Also, just to learn a little bit more about your experience, I mean, after something like that, you begin to talk with guys. I mean, like I telling you earlier today, when I went to Vietnam, first thing I learned from the guys that you got a little older, the things I learned from the guys that got there was that we're not here for ma and apple pie and any of this politics. We're here to survive. The people on the other side, if somebody fires at us, we fire back to basically protect our lives. But they're doing the same thing. They had, these guys knew in their mind. They said, we're already saying no. We don't believe that they're guilty of anything or we're guilty of anything. These other forces larger than us have put us in the middle of this thing, and they've got us fighting. But we could care less about this. We're just trying to survive right now. You know. And later, even when I was on a search and destroy mission. We had there was one of those guys that I remember going up my own sort of evolution in a sense of being in the military was I remember humping up these hills. We had run out of water and and food and rations, and I think I was getting heat exhaustion. And one of the things that I did is I said, we need to stop, and they said, no, you're not going to stop. We're going to keep humping up these hills. We've got a mission to fulfill. And I actually just got pissed off, you know. I didn't know why. I wasn't thinking politically. But I got pissed off. I took my machine gun and threw it down the hill. And the lieutenant came and threw me down the hill after it. And I picked it up. But because I did that, everybody stopped. Everybody got a second breath. And then we got up the hill, people started saying, no, we're not going to go any further. So we came on this open field, and they said, we're going to march in. We're supposed to go into this village. And we said, no. People just said, no, they're not going anywhere. Now, I don't know if I started that or what happened, but I know that all of a sudden it just seemed to happen. And so they ordered this sergeant, one of the first people I met when I came to Vietnam, who actually took me from Da Nang to my duty station. And as a good sergeant, you know, he obeyed orders and went up this path and went up this little path, and the leaves just floated around him as he went into the brush, and all of a sudden you hear an explosion, hit a mine, killed him. Now, they couldn't get any of us to budge at that moment. And the next thing that happened was that they had to call in this colonel or general, I don't remember what his rank was, but he came in on a helicopter, gave this big speech and ordered us, you know, and everybody just gave him the middle finger salute, and we wouldn't budge. And so he figured, you know, our morale was bad, and he called in helicopters, bring in hot chow and beer as they wrap up this body and put it in that same helicopter that brought in the food. And I think about this quite often because it's like a movie screen in my mind that just comes back all the time. And I remember we're sitting there drinking, I'm drinking beer, and a lot of guys didn't drink, so I would switch rations for more beer, and I was getting drunk and smoking my cigarettes and looking over at this village off the top of this hill. And first thing I see is this firefight with these this little convoy going by, and we call over to see if they need support, and they said no. It was Black Market was actually trying to steal. It was a medical convoy trying to steal their drugs, and then but this village is just laid out in front of us, and they've got these rice paddies. I don't remember if there was a river. I just remember there was these rice paddies and these little huts off to the side, and this plane comes in and starts laying napalm over the top of this. There's a Phantom jet coming down, and I'm sitting there watching this thing, and as I'm watching it, I'm going, shit, this thing is going to crash. And these guys said, nah, man, they know what they're doing. Sure enough, it went, it exploded. I call over, and they said the pilot got out. He was okay. He was hidden. So I don't know if it was, I think it was the next day we actually went into it, and I was tromping through the rice paddies. These other guys were walking along the dikes. And all I can remember is that I was hear these explosions, a bang and a scream, a bang and a scream. People were being hitting these mines and booby traps. And as I got out of the water, out of the rice paddies, about every 5 feet there was a booby trap set up. There would be a wire or a punji pit or something. And I would hear more explosions and more screams. And then it was silent. It was just like, this is where my mind all of a sudden goes into blank. It's, I don't know what happened. I just remember we were sitting down. I was sitting down by some unexploded bomb on this one section, and these trucks came and picked us up. We'd been out in the jungle for a couple of weeks, you know, and I said we had ran out of food and water. And these convoys came and picked us up out of this village and drive us back, seemed less than a mile and a half from where we were, you know? And I'm going, what is this about? Now, I don't remember any of the villages, and I remember one day that when I thought about this particular thing is, why don't I remember? Or why did they do this? And I got frightened by the thought that maybe we went in there and we massacred those people. And that scares the fuck out of me. Oh, excuse me, it scares the heck out of me. But that that's the kind of thing that I'm dealing with now. I'm in therapy now because this has come back to me, and it's only become back when the Afghan and Iraqi war. It started affecting me, and I started thinking about it more. It triggered these things, and whether it was or wasn't, I gotta see what the time is here. Whether it was or wasn't something that happened, it was bizarre no matter what, that we went in, whether the people fled or not. These guys died, and when we got back, nobody, I don't know your experience here, we didn't talk about the dead. I would thought that we would have had some kind of thing where they brought us all together and remembered the names of everybody, you know, and called those out. Because in the progressive community, when we lose somebody, we say presente, you know, we recognize those people. We, as veterans, we recognize those names of those people that were lost. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because it was like it didn't happen. And you begin to just move on. We just got to go on. We don't want to think about that. And that affected me. I don't know when you were there what you faced is with people coming back or people that were you in combat yourself directly?
I was never in combat. I pulled security for convoys occasionally, and I did guard duty. And
well, that's in it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was enough of in it that I have experiences that I remember. But not enough in it that I don't consider myself a combat vet. Yeah. And there were many people who I interacted with who were combat vets, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I have a really, really good friend of mine who was a medic in the 82nd, and he was on the front lines when they went into Fallujah, and he's since, he's gotten out and he's doing really well in school and doing great things, but whenever we have a discussion about that, his countenance changes, and immediately it just goes to a place where it's not that he doesn't want to talk about it, but I think a lot of vets don't have the words. We're not prepared to discuss that. They tell us to come, you know, we do the mission, and then whatever happens is just part of the mission, and a lot of people don't even want to remember what that is. You know, I don't meet a lot of vets who like to sit down and tell stories about, you know, from my generation. I meet older vets who have had 20 or 30 years to process it or to try and work through some of that, and they're a little more forthcoming. But people who are coming back with so little time to process it and still see it going on and watch it every night on the news, it's not something that they're ready to do yet.
Well, I noticed that when I meet a lot of vets too, that trying to process it. I mean, I wasn't ready to talk about it when I came back. It took me many, many years to talk, and I didn't talk about that. I may be involved in political activism in the 1980s, like I said, the sanctuary movement, labor activism, those kinds of things. But I didn't talk about Vietnam. Mm-hmm. You know, there was even the anti-war protests were going on, and I wasn't directly involved. I supported it. I
think
cared.
it's also even earlier generations. I mean, you know, all the World War I and World War II vets that were around when I was younger, at least, and you know, World War II vets still. You know, of course, you'd see these TV programs where you got the old vet who's talking about their adventures in the Pacific and whatever. Right. But I don't know if I've ever met somebody like that. I mean, maybe I just haven't hung out at enough veteran halls, and maybe they're out there. But it seems like most of them don't want to talk about it, or they'll talk about other things. They'll talk about the food, you know, but they're not going to talk about combat.
No. Well, they talk about helping other veterans, though. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even when I talk to those World War II vets, you know, and Korean vets. So oftentimes they're not talking about the war, but they're talking about, you know, what we need to do for veterans when they come back. They believe, you know, people need to support those people, as I do. I believe we need to support those. And maybe we wouldn't have to identify veterans per se if we had a system that supported everybody. You know?
Well, I think that might be one of the problems is that the government and the military are not addressing the issue on a human level. It's on a mission level, and it's very bureaucratic. But the people who are involved in it, like you're talking about your experiences, like it gets down to the people that you're with and the people that are on the other side. And that was one of the greatest experiences from Afghanistan, is we worked with the local nationals. So we were in the population every day. And, you know, a lot of them learn how to speak English just from being around soldiers all the time. But there are guys in there who are going to university. These are college-educated people who get recruited by KBR or get recruited by the military to work on bases. And you can sit down and have a conversation about the politics of what's happening, and you make it human. And that's what... That gives you the language to be able to discuss it, to be able to put your experiences into words. That's not something that the military or the government provides soldiers or provides people who are performing the mission. It's not put on a level like this is reality. This is something that's going to take place. It becomes paperwork and it becomes an objective. That's right. And I think that's the big separation there, and that's why we don't know how to discuss it yet.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, one of the things is how I was watching a movie here the other day, and I think it was British talking about going to war in World War I or II. I can't remember. It was an old film. But even then, the guy was saying, hey, this is about oil. You know? And I thought, whoa, man, you know, this is not about liberation. It's not about trying to bring democracy to the world. It's about trying to take over resources that people need for their comfort in society and to profit by it. And one of the things I thought my post-traumatic stress was related to certain incidences and sometimes, but other times I feel that's only part of it. The other part was the betrayal. The idea that they told me I was going to defend this country, you know, and the idea that when I learned that's not what it was about, and that these things were lies, and that I'm continuing to be lied to as they send young people to go and fight, both men and women, into these battles. For me, I mean, I've seen a lot of wars. You know, the wars going into Central and Latin America. You know, the idea of overthrowing democratic nations, going into Panama, into Grenada. All of these things upset my sense of justice as a human being, and why couldn't the broader community understand that? And yet when I heard people discuss, if I went to another country, you know, I went to Cuba in, I think it was 94 or something like that, and I talked to people on the street, just the average person on the street, or I went back to Vietnam. I've been in the Philippines when I was stationed in the Philippines, and just talking to the average person, they knew more about world politics. They knew more about America than I knew about America, you know. It was, people would sit in cafes and talk about things. And yet, when I would go around here, and if we begin a discussion, I don't want to talk about politics. They'll talk about baseball, football, basketball, women. I don't know what women talk about, guys. But all of these various issues that people want to talk about, or making money. Making money seemed to be the biggest thing that everybody wants to talk about. And, you know, I was interested in books and history and art. Art is something that's, to paint and to draw is my forte. That's something that I do. Now I do it mainly as sort of therapy to get these demons out of my mind. I mean, I'm compelled to do it. It's not a job, you know. It's something I have to do. And with that sort of transition, you're also writing. You're doing poetry. You have 2 blogs. I do. Right? And what are you discussing on those blogs?
So the first one is called Living Revolution. And I think it stemmed from conversations that I've had with other vets and just with the group of people that I surround myself with. And what I'm trying to do is change the way that people think about is what's happening in the world. And I think you can address it on a variety of different levels, but you have to look at the idea that all of those levels are in some way connected. And what I'm trying to do is just break people out of the box of the status quo. Trying to take people away from the dominant paradigm, to be able to think creatively and to think critically about what's happening in the world, about, like you're talking about educating yourself, about being presented with an idea from a point of authority, and then looking at that idea and saying, okay, this doesn't match up with what I believe, or this doesn't match up with what's actually happening in front of me. Mm-hmm. So really it's just a place for me to put up some ideas about, you know, books that I read or things that I watch on TV or discussions that I have. I can put it out there, and it's really just been the group of friends that I have. They'll comment back, and that'll start a conversation that we can have in person the next day.
Yeah, sharing these ideas with people.
Right. And I think that's the first step, because you change the way you think, and then you take one step further and change the way you talk, and eventually that's going to lead to changing the way you act. And I think if there's ever going to be any kind of change, that's the process that has to take place. We have to get to that point where we recognize something that is at base not true. Mm-hmm. We recognize how it doesn't match up with reality, and we want to get to the point where what we say and what we believe matches our reality. Mm-hmm. And I think that process is about building connections in the community. It's about building partnerships between all those different aspects of life that we're looking at, and I'm just trying to break that down and say, look, it's all connected, and we can address each of these things from different standpoints.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, part of the thing you're saying, I mean, the lead into this show was one of your songs, Dave, from your website. What if you knew, you know? And that's basically what we're asking people, you know, what if you knew this was going on? Mm-hmm. I love your music because I think it's a critique on a lot of these issues that we're talking about. Just tell me a little bit about your process of being a songwriter. You've traveled around the world. You were in Copenhagen, right? You want to tell us about what was going on over there?
It was you know, the climate talks were happening, and in the world's media and the world's leaders and many thousands of protesters were there from all over the place. It was a good festive vacation. It was really cold, though. It was way too cold and dark all the time, you know. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Denmark, but it was especially cold. Yeah. But I think, I mean, what if you knew, I think it's a nice little talking point, just because I think it basically represents the essence of what I'm trying to do as an artist, which is just inform people about what's happening in the world and what's happened before. And, you know, I think it's like, you know, you were saying as well, but people have to know what's going on. And and then that doesn't mean that there's going to be a well-organized mass movement that's going to come along and change everything, but people have to know what's up before that might happen. Mm-hmm. You know, I think what people need generally is combination. It seems to me, in my readings of history and various experiences, there's three main factors here. People need to know what's up, and there needs to be organization that's really ecumenical, really inclusive, and really level-headed, and they need to have the belief that victory is possible. You know, that you know, and it's, I think people often think that you know, like they look at these struggles that have happened at various points, whatever, you name it, you know, and they lost battles, and there's been a hell of a lot of them. You know, it's part of the process. It's inevitable. It's a shame, but, you know, every one of those lost battles, with the exception of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and certain others, but almost, you know, just 99.9% of those lost battles, they actually thought that they might win. I mean, they didn't think they definitely were going to win in most cases, but they actually thought it's gonna work out. You know, they didn't just go rebel in order to get their heads chopped off. You know. Right. Even, I mean, you know, you can be terribly oppressed and not rebel. You know, you have to think that you might actually get somewhere other than the guillotine, you know, if you're going to rebel, you know.
Well, one thing I wanted to raise, too, is, I mean, Veterans for Peace, the motto is, you know, working to build peace through nonviolence. And I ask you to think about that a little bit too. There's a number of I remember we just had somebody from Honduras here, you know, and he was speaking about the coup that took place there, and he actually was running as a representative under the same political party as Zelaya, and what they decided. Because there was a corruption and he pulled out of that. He had death threats, and even through all those death threats, he maintained that he was nonviolent and that they were going to move the revolution towards a nonviolent revolution. And I asked, you know, my own personal thing is I believe in nonviolence, but at the same time I believe in the right of self-defense, and I believe that, you know, that some people are led to extraordinary measures when no hope is there, and I can't condemn them for that. But at the same time, you know, yes, I would love a world with nonviolence. I really admire that he has that ability. I don't know that I have that ability at some point. I mean, I've been in situations where I've just here in Portland, you know, in the streets, had to defend myself, and I have picked up a gun in the past. But it came to a point where I would never pick up a gun again. For me, I can't do it. I just physically can't do it anymore. But it comes to a point where we have to start talking about how are we going to move things forward? How are we going to reach people? How is that mass movement going to take place? Because it seems like we had millions of people in the street before these wars began. And with less people, we've stopped wars. With less people, we've created revolution. And yet the media itself ignored that. And the Bush administration, your YouTube there basically was a lot of Bush administration. We're now in an administration that represents sort of the idea in the beginning of a change of that kind of policy, and that people are going to listen. Yet I see that we're leading more people into Afghanistan. We're still in Iraq.
I mean, people out there and all over the United States, I mean, you know, in part of the process of understanding what's up, you know, when I say understanding what's up, part of that process absolutely involves understanding that both parties are run by the Fortune 500, and the leadership of both parties is hopelessly corrupt, and Barack Obama seems quite evidently to be part of that corruption. You know, it's I mean, there's some great folks, Dennis Kucinich and Barbara Lee, whoever, but these people have no particular influence. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the leadership of these parties are both corporate, and they have been since the inception of both of these parties, with maybe a 2-year exception in the 1860s when the radical Republicans ran the country. I read a lot of history, and I think there's really no question that both parties are corporate parties, and until people understand that and get past the idea that there's going to be somebody saving them from one of these parties, there's no hope for a successful mass movement in this country.
Well, and even more so now with the recent Supreme Court decision, they've gotten to the point where it's not even covert anymore. It's just right out there in the public, and I'm so surprised that there hasn't been more of a response to that decision, to say, I mean, it's kind of been obvious for, like you're saying, a whole long time that there's been that corporate influence, but now they're just to the point where they don't even care. They don't even care. It doesn't have to be hidden. We're just going to say we can buy an election, and this is who's going to be in charge. And
well, history actually shows that Supreme Courts have ruled on the side of oppression over and over and over again. And that, I mean, slavery was it was illegal to turn in a runaway. I mean, if you didn't turn in a runaway slave, you were
they were
committing
serious.
a crime. Right?
Yeah, and you could go to prison.
You
for
could go to prison for years. So, and then labor movements. I mean, the person couldn't strike. You couldn't do this. I mean, there were so many different things, but those things changed, but they changed because people were willing to get into the streets, not only just sitting there protesting, but they actually took over buildings. They went on strikes. If we don't lend our labor to them, there's nothing they can do.
That's right.
Except shoot. But the thing is when labor began to fight back, they basically went on strike. They fought back. There were a lot of blood in the streets, but people won many of the things that people take for granted today. The right to vote, the right for women to vote, health care, Social Security, a lot of things that people have no idea. We're losing those things as people forgot how to do that. Now they're just in the streets, but they don't know how to make a demand. And that's what I'd like to see more of. I'd like to see some of the unions, which have lost so many members over the years, really organize and say, we're not going to work. We're not going to work for you. Maybe they're just wildcat strikes here and there. And if the union leadership isn't going to do it, then the workers got to do it. And that's what's happened in the past also. So we need to get together to do something. But I wanted you to play a song for us because you are David is going to be on the this March. When it's April 9th at Maybell's Club, which is going to be the Until You Come Home CD release, and he has a song on there, and him and George are going to be touring along the Northwest here, and just if you play a song for us.
How much time do we have? I mean, I could get out the CD, or I could just do a poem that doesn't require the guitar.
Do a poem? Do you want to strum with that poem? Or?
No, I wouldn't normally.
Okay.
Do we? I don't know what kind of time we have, but I can take out the guitar. It'll take a couple minutes to get it.
Well, I'll just do a poem then.
I'll do a poem. Okay. Okay. Well, so here's one I wrote in 2006 after Israel invaded Lebanon, and again, and it's. Yeah, it's about that. Which camera am I looking into there?
Look right in there.
I can look at you.
Look at you. Look right
that one. That's the light on that one. Oh, that one.
There you go.
2 soldiers have been captured. They crossed to the other side. 2 soldiers taken prisoner. Several others died. This is how it started, so said the Jewish state. Forget about 96, 82, 67, 48. 2 soldiers taken captive, and by the Sea of Galilee, we must defend our borders wherever they may be. We must defend our soldiers wherever they're deployed. 2 of them are captured, 1 country is destroyed. Somewhere in Tel Aviv, generals drawing battle lines for the town where Jesus turned water into wine. On the 10-year anniversary of a massacre of children, they thought it was a good idea to massacre some children. Anyone in the South, I heard Ehud Olmert say, everyone's a target and may be killed today. And if your home has turned to rubble, it may be pulverized some more, because 2 soldiers have been captured and we got to settle up the score. 100,000 homes leveled to the ground. Every olive branch on offer burned where it was found. Every chance at dialogue rejected right on cue. If you're going to burn your bridges, you might as well bomb them too. They even bombed the prison where they used to torture fighters, where they had the dogs and leashes, cigarettes and lighters, where they were kept shackled, not allowed to stand, where they torched the forests, turned them into sand. The entire world watches. A few thousand demonstrate. Governments take action all too little or too late. All the telephones are ringing in case you couldn't read the signs. This is the IDF, and you're in the firing line. Condoleezza came to visit for about an hour. She thought it was a party, some kind of baby shower. She said these were the birth pangs of a brand new morn. But in the hospitals today, all the babies were stillborn. The stars and stripes among the ruins say where they were made, in case anybody wonders about all that military aid, in case anybody wonders about all the mines around the farms, or why so many toddlers are missing legs and arms, or why so many wonder exactly what was meant by wiping out our homes and then sending us a tent. Or why a few ask them, who is Nasrallah? They'll tell you, he's our leader, and we all are Hezbollah.
That was powerful, David. There's a song that I heard you sing here just recently, as people just came back from Gaza. It wasn't dealing with Gaza, but it was dealing with the Somali Pirates.
Yes.
I love that song.
Yeah.
Do you know it as just in lyrics as a poem?
Oh, it doesn't really work as a poem, but they should come to the show on April 9th, and I'll sing a song they won't forget about this for the Somali Pirates. I've actually written 4 songs about pirates, and 4, one of the golden age from the 1700s, and various other songs about one children's song. But the Somali Pirates, I think, are really admirable, actually, what they're doing, and people should not only come on April 9th to the benefit show and sing along on the ode to the Somali Pirates, but they should read up on the Somali Pirates and support their efforts, because the only thing standing in between the dumping of nuclear waste off the harbors of Somalia and not dumping nuclear waste off the harbor in Somalia are the pirates. Yeah. I mean, you can't count on the international bodies to monitor these things if there's a government that's not functioning and doesn't have a coast guard, and you can just dump your nuclear waste in their harbor. Apparently, then Western corporations will do just that. And this was discovered in the 2004 tsunami because it washed up on the coast.
Well, I knew about it some time back. I mean, 3 of my colleagues were Somali. One was they're from Somaliland, which also people don't realize is separated from the country in 1991, became a separate country and been operating peacefully for all this time. And yet the world community will not recognize them as a separate nation. And Abdi Hassan, who is one of my professors at Portland State University, and we kind of got caught up because during the attack on Mughaleta Sarah by skinheads who literally beat him to death, and we came around these issues around racism. And I came to campus as a labor leader who lost his job in a bitter unions battle and an injury, work injury, and went back to school. And when I came into campus, there were a lot of racist issues, and I protested those, and people put us 2 together. And as we began, he became my mentor on how to deal with a lot of issues. And I learned about Somalia, and I learned about the Association of African Students. I became a member of those things. MECHA was another organization that I became a part of, and it's actually supported. I have a Latino background. We do. My grandmother was Panamanian. So as we deal with these issues, I learned from them, and they went back, and they're now back living in Somaliland. But they were telling me about how nuclear waste was being dropped off there for a long time. So we are wrapping up now, and I want to just thank people for showing up. I want to thank David for showing up for this, and Tobias. Tune in on every 4th Saturday of the month, and we do Veterans for Peace. Thank you very much, and good night.